Yeah, hey now. Good morning, PSW staff, clients, friends joining us. Let's get right to work. Classical Tuesday, but it's going to be a fun Classical Tuesday. We're going to look at a Jewish French composer. Did some really fun Brazilian type music. I think you'll really dig it. But yesterday, your film scoring assignment, so get it into me today. In the Mood for Love, Wong Kar-wai's masterpiece film. You should watch it. It really puts you in the mood for love. Yeah, so get it to me by today. We'll see the results for Friday. There's a prize. Don't forget about the prize. But you got to watch the class. Okay, so yeah, getting back to this guy. Dave Brubeck, famous jazz pianist that we might do a class on. He did Take 5, which, I mean, you know, probably his biggest hit. I mean, with his band, he did that. But also Burt Bacharach. These two gentlemen studied with this classical composer, and we're gonna figure out if they got anything from him. But this guy was more than a teacher. He was a composer, conductor, and one of the most prolific. I mean, he wrote over 400 works, probably, operas, film scores, ballets. A lot of this stuff was written in the 20s and 30s in Europe, in Paris mostly, and just really fun stuff. So today we're going to be looking at, hey now, Darius Milhaud. So don't say Milhaud. It looks like Milhaud, but it's French. Milhaud. Milhaud. Easy to say. And wrote most of the big songs, his big things in the 20s and 30s, like I said, for theaters. I mean, a lot of these were these people in Paris were doing avant-garde theater, ballets, and things that were not too avant-garde, but not traditional opera, traditional ballet. They were doing more creative things in Paris. I mean, if you want to get a good idea, look at Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris, and that shows you all of the, you know, creative energy going into the arts in the City of Lights during that time. So we'll talk about Milhaud's life and then listen to some of his very, very fun, festive, melodic music. Some of it is dissonant music too. We got to get over there. I mean, we're just talking in Koreatown here. So let's go to Hollywood and let's go to Marseille, France, where he's born. Born in 1892, dies in 1974 in Geneva. So, of course, we need context and a timeline. So he's going on, what other French composers have we looked at in the 20s and 30s? Well, Poulenc, we did a class on a long time ago. Poulenc is a very melodic composer, witty, elegant, beautiful music, one of my personal favorites. Early influences of early jazz, but this is very consonant, very tonal music, because as we know, composers are veering off into more avant-garde, not avant-garde, I mean more non-tonal music, atonal music, which I try not to give you guys too much of that, because that music's not really that fun. Yeah, I mean some of it is, but so Poulenc's going on. Biggest influence too is Villalobos going on. Villalobos we did a whole class on. Brazilian composer, probably the most famous composer that came out of Brazil. Who else is in there? I mean, Sergio Mendes creates a whole bossa nova sound from Villalobos. We did a whole class on bossa nova and Sergio Mendes. I don't know if they knew each other, but remember Villalobos died right in 57. Bossa nova is starting in 58 with Sergio Mendes, Herb Alpert. Milhaud is going to be really influenced by Brazilian music because he spends about 2 years during World War I in Brazil. So it's so cool to know that, to think, well, if I visit this place down over here, way down in South America, it'll change my whole way of thinking, my whole lifestyle. Also, if you remember, we talked about Herb Alpert. Remember, he was kind of trying to find his own sound, and what was it? He went to Tijuana and at a bullfight noticed all the wonderful mariachi music, different kinds of music, the horns, and when he came back he said, I want to incorporate that with popular music. So just visiting somewhere else can influence a composer tremendously, or a songwriter. And then what's going on? I mean, 20s and 30s, we can't get into the realm of, well, this is just classical music. We have to also globally look. I mean, we know Count Basie and Duke Ellington. I bring this up every class just for reinforcement. I know that, and for review. You know, it's not like I'm running out of things and I'm just rehashing it, but I want us to think, oh, okay, Duke Ellington and Count Basie are writing swing music, while in France, this is the kind of classical music, Brazilian music is going on. So all these things are going on. Okay, so those are the composers that are happening. So Milhaud's Jewish family, father was a merchant of almonds. My dad never sold almonds, but you know, this was a different time. And there was a piano in the house, and he starts playing the piano, and improvising on the piano, then starts taking violin lessons, and becomes interested in composition at an early age. So studies at the Paris Conservatory. We've talked, I mean, there's too many composers to name that have gone to that conservatory. Big one, Debussy studied there. It's still Saint-Saëns. Remember we did Saint-Saëns, the Carnival of the Animals? He studies there. Eric Satie studies there. And Eric Satie is kind of in that timeline with Milhaud going on. He gets into counterpoint, harmony, theory. You know, you need to know the rules first so you can break them. And after his studies, goes to Brazil. And it's interesting because Villalobos was born there, but Villalobos goes to France and gets influence from those composers. Milhaud's coming from France to Brazil, influenced by Brazilian folk music. So music is a universal language, right? When he comes back to France, though, he's got Brazilian folk music, Brazilian popular music that was in Brazil. And by 1920, he premieres The Ox on the Roof, which is one of his most famous songs. It was so popular, they named a bar after that. And it was a surrealist ballet. So this was, in 1920, the premiere was a ballet. If we take a listen, he's using a lot of Brazilian tunes. He's quoting them in his compositions. And let's just take a listen to how fun this is and tell me what you hear. So you hear the fun theme, and then it goes into something different, right? Then you hear them return to the fun theme. Did you hear that? He keeps going back to da 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 da, the dance thing, and then he goes into another section, and then it's like they go back to the part. Da, 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 da. I mean, it's such a beautiful piece of music. You can see the conductor, the players having so much fun. This was a response to the serious music going on in the 20s. So that's kind of what he's doing. He comes to the US, he comes to New York in 22, so a few years after that, and he says he hears authentic jazz for the first time. This is what's great about our country. You know, we do have original, you know, usually it's like, we stole from European white guys. That's where everything came from. But no, a lot of the greatest music came from our country, from black musicians. And so on the streets of Harlem, he says that he left. So again, he's discovered a new place, a new land with new music going on. His ears are open. So he writes The Creation of the World, which uses jazz elements, a lot of jazz elements. And this was a ballet in about 6 dance scenes. Small orchestra with a solo saxophone. Saxophone was really not being used in the orchestra, especially in the 20s, but now he's saying, I heard jazz, you know, and if we think of what kind of jazz he heard, it was very early swing jazz probably, because this is way before Charlie Parker and Cannonball and Coltrane. They're not even born yet. So this is what he's hearing, so he composed that. So in 1923, he writes this Creation of the World, and puts in jazz elements. Now he precedes another composer who's going to put jazz elements that we've talked about 2 years before. Gershwin comes up with Rhapsody in Blue in 1924. So Milhaud's doing this 2 years earlier. It's different pieces of music for sure, but it's definitely a classical composer saying this kind of other music, jazz, is something that's good music. We should take note of that. So, but he was a little bit before. So in 1925, he does what most of us do. He marries his cousin, Madeline. She was an actress, but she actually wrote the libretti for the lyrics for many of Milhaud's operas. So very, very influential. Because of the war, World War II, a lot of composers come actually to LA. I mean, we could do a whole class on composers that we talked about. Stravinsky in LA, maybe the second class ever, but there were so many other people that came to Los Angeles. I mean, we do a Los Angeles class every week. Why? Because it's wonderful and great, and there's great weather. So because of the war, he teaches at Mills College, which is in Oakland. Brubeck studies with him at Mills, and then a few years later, he founds the Music Academy of the West, a summer conservatory, and this is where Burt Bacharach studies with him. We all know Burt Bacharach. I mean, we did a whole class. I mean, all of us can sing I Say a Little Prayer. I mean, still thriving as a songwriter today. And if you remember, I said this about Burt Bacharach, and now we can talk about, because we're doing Milhaud. Milhaud did say to Burt Bacharach something very important. He said, don't be afraid of writing something people can remember and whistle. Don't ever feel discomfited by a melody. So, again, we talk about music and it being serious or high-minded or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But if you can whistle something and have a melody that people can remember, isn't that more important than analyzing a score and saying, hey, this is great because it's, in the third hour the second bar of this, and you know, that's fine too, but we also want something memorable. So Milhaud was writing memorable music, and he told Burt Bacharach, you know, don't forget about melody, and if people can whistle it, that's something special. So I mean, he had pretty bad condition. He was in a wheelchair most in the 1920s, paralyzing rheumatic condition. So he had to use a wheelchair. Died a few years later at the age of 81, and I mean, some other pieces that are great. In 1937, he writes this really fun thing for two pianos, but it was also orchestrated for a lot of other things. Scaramouche, a suite for two pianos in the beginning, but this is, you know, based off the character from the Commedia dell'arte, and it premiered in Paris, and it's 3 movements based on incidental music, and I mean, listen to how fun this is. So because this is the saxophone playing, do you remember Oliver Nelson? We did Oliver Nelson. He doesn't come in until the 60s. But Milhaud's writing this in 37. I mean, listen to this jazz line and tell me it doesn't sound like a modern jazz pattern that Oliver Nelson could have easily stolen. Goes by really fast, but I mean, this is it's great because the classical composers are being influenced by jazz, but vice versa too. Jazz guys are listening to these guys saying, wow, some of these things are really cool. We could incorporate them in our solos, and indeed they did. Another one of my favorite works is a set of piano pieces, 12 dances for piano, and Saudades do Brazil, which means missing Brazil. Forgive my accent. And he wrote these when he was there, 1917 to 18, and each movement is a neighborhood in Rio de Janeiro. This is his use of polytonality. This is when you're probably going to think, well, this doesn't sound right. Polytonality is the use of more than one key at the same time. So if you play a C chord and a D chord at the same time, you're going to hear that. A little dissonant, right? So how does he do this? So let's listen to the Copacabana, and not Barry Manilow, the version of Copacabana, and let's just listen briefly to the beginning. So it starts off like a Brazilian's folk tune, right? With, you know, feel. He's got a G chord in the left hand, but what's going on in the right hand? It's a B chord. It's sounding dissonant. Now, to our ears, it sounds, well, wrong notes. Back then, this was just a different sound. We think of artists today. I mean, Joe really loves Black Bear. There's other contemporary artists, and what do? They do sounds that we haven't heard of. So although this might sound wrong to us, back then this was just exploring new sounds. Now we have synthesizers and producing elements that can create new sounds. So what he's doing on purpose is finding new sounds. Again, in Corcovado, left hand is playing a G chord, right hand is playing a D chord. So Milhaud's great because he's being complex, but he's being melodic. We talk about that a lot. He's creating melodies that are really fun, but he's also looking forward and not just staying in the realm of his, in the comfort of just writing Brazilian tunes. He's saying, Brazilian tunes are great. How can I use that in my classical music and to my friends in Paris and all that stuff? They loved it. I mean, people, I don't know how well, I think in classical circles he's very well known, but he deserves a class. That's why I thought that you'd enjoy some of his music. Really fun music, but also kind of cutting edge though for back then. So I hope you enjoyed a little bit of Darius Milhaud, and tomorrow we're gonna look at something really fun too. So miss you and love you, and see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.